Hadi Choopan brought one of the best physiques of the decade to the 2024 Arnold Classic, and maybe in fact be the best physique of the 2020s thus far. It's definitely up there with 2020 Big Ramy and 2024 Samson Dauda, which are matchups I will do by the way. But when I think of the claim of the best physique of the given era, in this era my mind at least goes to someone who isn't even an open competitor. Keone Pearson, current two-time champ of the 212 division, pretty much has it all, including supreme dominance of his division. But if we were to compare him to what many people think is the best physique of the decade so far, Hadi Choopan, who would come out on top? Can Keone's superior genetics and structure defeat the Persian Wolf? If not, just how close does Keone get to one of the best physiques ever brought to a modern stage? Let's jump into today's video to find out. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. We're starting out with a battle of aesthetics here in the front double. Keone always gets props for his shape and structure, but at the 2024 Arnold, Hadi's balance, shape, and his other aesthetic elements were on point. Now, one of the main things to pay attention to in this comparison is the size discrepancy, or lack thereof. Hadi's about an inch taller than Keone, but I did size Keone a bit taller at times because Hadi takes a wider, more squatted leg stance in his poses. Furthermore, Hadi was probably weighing in the 230s, maybe, and this is pushing it, 240s here. Keone is a 212 competitor, yes, but he was actually like 10 pounds under the weight cap at his last Olympia, so on paper there should be a solid 20 to 30 pounds difference here. Here though, I don't really notice a big discrepancy. With Keone's proportions and the roundness, he looks bigger than he actually is. In the legs, Keone has really good size and sweep, but Hadi has more maturity. He has some faint feathering too. In the torso, this is Keone's moneymaker and he wins it. He has a deep vacuum like Hadi, but wider, lower tapering lats and a smaller waist. Hadi is not even close to bad. It's actually one of the better torso heaps I've seen in a while, but Keone is a 1 in a million athlete, and a lot of that sentiment stems from his great torso proportions. And in the arms is a bit closer than I thought. Hadi puts up a solid fight, but Keone takes the namesake of the shot too. So overall they're very similar. You get slightly better shape from Keone, but a little more size from Hadi. It can go either way. And I'd really want to see this on a real stage just to see what the actual size difference is. And luckily for us, we probably will get the opportunity to see that very soon. But going by what I can see here, I have Keone taking this. So this will be one of the only times I give this pose to anyone but 2024 Hadi. Usually he's winning it in every comparison, and he still might be winning it here. With that said, I will keep it narrow, and I will be using my regular margin of victory system. 3 points for big wins, 2 for solid wins, and 1 point for narrow wins like this. The front lat is one I was surprised with too. These front shots are prime real estate for Keone. His proportions are just better than Hadi's. Hadi has this longer torso and higher lats, leaving space in his lower torso. He also has the less thick arms and forearms, giving this pose a slightly lankier look. Usually this pose is still more than enough to defeat even most open competitors, but Keone is just taking his pose a step further than Hadi. Keone once again has the slightly smaller waist, and his lats are just better than Hadi's, at least in this pose. Keone has similar width and his lats taper lower. He just has more lat exposure. And the legs on him are very solid. I do prefer Hadi though, but there is an imbalance. But you still get great details and similar size out of him yet again. Now Keone does have the infamous ab split, and I hate it. Regular viewers of this channel know that. But Hadi is not free from flaws either. The delts are more than sus. This is actually an okay looking shot for them. They'll get worse in this comparison. But overall, I don't think these things, the ab split for Keone or the delts for Hadi, sway my opinion too much. This is going to go to Keone again with another 1 point win. The first side pose is quite eye-opening. This is supposed to be a Hadi pose, at least on paper. Since it's all about thickness, it would make sense that the open competitor would get the dub, but I don't think he is. Yet again, at least by what I can see here, Keone isn't giving up a whole lot of size, width, even detail. In fact, he wins the side leg mainly because of detail. He has feathering in the glute and more cuts than Hadi. Keone is also bigger by the looks of it with his better hamstring drop. The midsection goes to him too. He has the deeper abs and you don't get to see that split. The arm and delt would be a lot closer if Hadi's delts were poking me in the eye. That far one is more cone-like than round, and the close one is muddled looking around the tie-in between the shoulder and arm. Keone has a really full and I guess just more real looking delt, and a really thick arm as well. The chest is close. Hadi has the broader set of pecs. They are taking up more space on his torso, but Keone's far pec just seems to be a little bit thicker and he has similar detail. This is yet another close pose, but even with better width and seemingly more depth to his physique, I'm going with the 212 champ here as well. Still nothing more than 1 point, but this has been a great start to this comparison for Keone. We're turning to the rear now, and these guys are actually both pretty weak in the rear double. I would go as far to say that it's Hadi's weakest shot. His lower body is probably the highlight of the pose. He's solid in both condition and development, but Keone has improved the back of his legs tremendously. This may be his most improved area, and I've been watching him train his lower posterior chain a lot on his IG recently, and the work is not going unrewarded, especially now that the condition is in a good place too. He can reveal all that hard work. He has way more developed hamstrings and adductors, even glutes to be honest. He has the cleaner lines in them as well. Hadi gets shredded, but you never quite get those striations from him. It's like he's put all of them together in that lone one striation in his lower glute, like Nasser El Sanbadi. The back gets a bit closer. While Keone is less mature and dense than Hadi, he has a great 3D quality and roundness to his back. Hadi is too flat. His arms are flat as well, and the delts are just funky. So I have Keone taking the arms and delts as well as a small win in the back portion. So he's just racking up small victories everywhere. Does that translate to a big overall win though? Of course not. Hadi is very solid and very complete. I can admit that this is a slightly bigger win than any pose so far, I would say, but that doesn't really mean much because all these poses have been extremely close, and this one will be no different. The second back pose is the much better of the two for the Persian Wolf. It's the opposite for Keone. Keone takes another win on the lower body for starters, but his back is just way too flimsy and green for this pose. His lack of depth and density are really exposed. Hadi has the much thicker lats and definitely a much thicker mid back. He is also drier and just more mature. He's winning the all-important aspect of width too, but Keone is not too far behind here as he is in the other metrics. I think this is going to be our first 2-point win. I just fail to see how anyone can give this to Keone. He's winning half the pose with legs, but that back at this point would not be up to snuff for Hadi. There's just more years of training and experience in Hadi's back, and it shows. So Hadi will break the mold of 1-point wins with his first victory in this comparison. Now, so far, this has been a pretty close comparison, and Keone has actually been winning most of these coin tosses thus far. However, this is where the cracks begin to form for Keone. It's a little strange though. He's winning this pose, the side tricep, except for one thing. And in that one thing, Hadi excels. But before we get to that, in the side leg, it's like the side chest. Keone takes it with a little bit more detail and a little bit more size. He wins the arm too, all of it. The delt doesn't have the lump like Hadi. He has a thick bicep and forearm, and I prefer his triceps to Hadi. Hadi is a bit bigger, but I like Keone's more because it's jutting off his arm a little bit more. And he has faint feathering in there too. I did say Hadi only wins one area, but I will actually give him another one before we get into that main point. I'd give him the pecs as well. They flatten out less than Keone's and have great detail. But then we have the elephant in the room, Keone's midsection. And then on the other side of that coin, you have Hadi, whose midsection is pretty much unrivaled in this era. Keone has the ab split, a diastasis recti, and it really hurts him here, even in a side pose. He has the roundness to the stomach, and the abs obviously aren't that pleasing. Hadi's stomach is tight, his obliques are diased, and the abs are very deeply separated. And on top of that, he is pretty solid everywhere else, even though he's losing every other area to Keone by a little. But that flaw that Keone has prevents him from taking the pose, even on the back of everything else. I'll keep this one close because Keone does in fact win everything else, but this one just has to go with Hadi with Keone's very unsightly issue. Unfortunately, that pose seemed to be the beginning of the end for Keone. While he reveals a major flaw, we run into some of Hadi's best poses. In fact, this is Hadi's best pose by far. No one beats him in the abs and thighs shot. Not Prime Nick Walker, not Andrew Jack, and certainly not Keone Pearson, no matter which way he wants to do it. Even if you ignore the fact that the twisting oblique shot doesn't truly count because it's not a head-on abs and thighs and he didn't do one at all, this is still a major loss for Keone. The stomach is downplayed here, but it's still bad. Everything else is great. Feathered quad, the abs and obliques themselves aren't even too bad, and he has a great arm and pec in this variation, but that stomach is an eyesore, and I'm not even trying to be mean, I'm just describing how it makes me feel to look at. Heck, not only is Hadi beating him apples to oranges like you see here, but if you put Hadi's twisting oblique shot up here, he'd clear Keone again. And sure, Keone has a vacuum, that's great, but again, you can put Hadi's up here and at least get close to Keone's. I think I would prefer Keone in the vacuum, but who cares, it's not the abs and thighs. Honestly, I talked myself out just now of giving this to Hadi with 2 points. This is going to Hadi with 3 points. I was going to go on a Keone apology tour and talk about the quads, and at least he has variations, but Hadi has all of those things. He has great quads, slightly smaller but more cut, but even giving them to Keone, Hadi would remain right on his heels. And Hadi could arguably beat Keone in every single variation of this shot. He's just running circles around Keone, and Keone's flaw, even in one variation, is a big stain on this pose. So I'm going to have to make this a 3-point win for Hadi. To end this portion of the comparison, we have our last shot, the most muscular. The final nail in the coffin for Keone. It's just the midsection. I don't know what else to say or how to say it. And the thing is, he is pretty solid everywhere else. The legs are massive looking here. I'd have him over Hadi even with the better cuts, at least for this shot. He has the thicker arms too. You get a lot of blank space from Hadi's pose because of the high biceps and thin forearms, but Keone is the opposite. Absolutely thick guns all the way down to the wrists. And his delts are free of blemishes if you catch my drift. I would give Hadi the chest yet again though. Keone is really arm and shoulder dominant, and his chest looks small next to those delts and arms. And he doesn't have the biggest chest insertion wise. Hadi looks like a plate of armor with crazy detail too. Keone's pecs are bunched up on his own physique. But yet again, that brings us back to the midsection, and I'm not going to say anything else. It speaks for itself. But it's a stain on an otherwise great pose for Keone. And for Hadi, it brings him all the way up to a 2-point victory in our final pose. Now we have the second round of judging, which are the overall physique categories. Let's start with perhaps the most controversial category, muscularity. Maybe on a real stage it looks different, but based on the photos, I didn't notice enough difference to quantify it here. They're similar in height, and even Hadi's overall weight advantage, even on paper, isn't that large. Keone's proportions and muscle bellies pull a lot of weight for him here. He's also of similar completeness now, so this will remain a tie. But while Hadi's size difference isn't that large, the condition difference was fairly noticeable. Hadi was definitely more shredded from the front, dry, grainy, separated, but Keone was also solid, no doubt. Keone is actually probably a bit more detailed from the back, to be honest. Go back and look at the glutes, hams, and even the back itself. He's just legitimately more detailed than Hadi in some areas, that's all I'm saying. And overall, even where he isn't, his condition was still very solid. He doesn't have the maturity of Hadi and those extra baked in details yet, but the separation and details are in a very good place for him at this point. So Hadi gets a 1-point win, but this is another thing I'd like to see them side by side for to get the true difference. Then we have shape, and I'm just gonna go and give this to Keone. That's going to be the popular answer, and I know the mob will lynch me if I say otherwise, but I'll just keep it at a 1-point win. He does have the slightly smaller waist and slightly better X-frame proportions, but Hadi was so great at this event, I think it really should be a tie. And finally, that brings us to flaws. First off, Hadi did have the delt issue. It came up in multiple poses, and it is an issue for sure. However, that just pales in comparison to Keone's one flaw, which yes, is that ab split. Not only does it cover Hadi's delts margin-wise, it brings Hadi all the way up to a 2-point win. I think Keone is just lucky it's not 3. As I said at the beginning of the video, Hadi Choopan brought one of the best physiques to the 2024 Arnold Classic, and certainly one of, if not the best physique of the decade so far. And if you're looking for someone higher on the list of the best physiques of the 2020s, you'll have to look past Keone Pearson, at least for right now. Winning this comparison with 69.6 points was 2024 Arnold Classic Hadi Choopan, with Keone Pearson scoring 30.4 points. This is a pretty simple one to understand. I really don't need to add too much at the end here. This version of Hadi is just too much for this young version of Keone currently. Hadi is just too polished. His extra condition helped him in a lot of poses, and he was majorly aided by Keone himself because Keone had that major flaw in the midsection. And since they're similar in levels of completeness, muscularity, and even somewhat in condition, that's all that was needed for Hadi. Now, will this always be the case? Will Hadi always beat Keone? I have to be honest, there's a good chance Keone, and others for that matter, top this physique from Hadi as the rest of the 2020s progresses. The talent pool we currently have is amazing. Everyone is just waiting to come into their own, and I think Keone at his career high has the potential to be one of the best physiques ever. Take the scores between these two. A 70-30 split is just on the outer edge of a solid win margin-wise. But Keone can and easily will make up ground very shortly. And going forward, we all know how crazy Keone's potential is. We're currently seeing him just barely realize what he's capable of, and there is a lot more runway left in his career in order to soar to epic heights. If we did this comparison in the future, what might that look like, for instance? Well, he really doesn't have a whole lot to do, so it's easy to imagine. The front shots are already a lock, and they'll probably just get better as he grows in the right areas and keeps the waist tight. He'll have even more exaggerated proportions, and being even bigger would help him shore up an even bigger margin in the side chest. If he can tighten up the midsection and control it a bit better, he can honestly win the side triceps too. And the back poses are a playground for him. He has good insertions. He just needs to put in the time, and with his already existing 3D qualities, with a bit more maturity and density, he could have a phenomenal back. Now going forward, he definitely needs to watch the ab split. He really can't afford it getting any bigger at all, but luckily for him, the amount of size he needs really isn't that crazy, and he pulls a vacuum a lot, which is okay with the judges, so he's already doing okay with quite a big flaw. Of course, we need to step back and consider that as is, I believe Keone stood his ground in this comparison. Let's put this into perspective. As I've said, Keone at the 2024 Arnold is at minimum a top 20 physique ever. Keone going 4-4 on poses and holding his own is quite impressive, especially especially considering he is less than 30 years old and a 212 competitor that doesn't even manage to weigh 212 pounds. And with very minimal improvements, this comparison will become a lot closer. Hadi's bringing one of the best physiques of the decade, yes, but we're not even halfway through the 2020s and Keone is nowhere near his final form. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. What did you guys think of this matchup and how do you think Keone will do in the open once he gets there? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And if you want to support the channel even further while shopping for some high quality supplements, head over to Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, use my code Project10 to get 10% off your entire order. That's code Project10 at armsracenutrition.com. And finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.